Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ruchi Bhatia from Hostbooks. I welcome you all at the Hostbooks webinar on e-invoicing challenges and recent judgment of Madras High Court on ITC. This event is being organized by Hostbooks Limited, and Hostbooks Limited is a fintech organization based out of Gurgaon. We at Hostbooks aim to provide a premium automated accounting and compliance solution for every small and medium enterprise. Hostbooks is led by a team of chartered accountants who came together to study the paradigm shift in accounting compliance in India. The launch of GST, One Nation, One Tax, by Indian government gave birth to the Hostbooks, the language of business. We have developed an automated cloud-based accounting and compliance software. Today, we have accounting, GST, e-way bill, TDS, income tax, point of sale, and e-invoicing solutions. These solutions have been developed using cutting-edge technology. Users can access the software from any device and from anywhere in the world. Hostbooks values its customers to the most, and that is the reason why we provide 24/6 support to our clients. We are present at 28 locations pan India, and with a team of experts of 250 professionals, we have more than 1 lakh active users, and 500 channel partners are associated with us pan India. Our accreditations include ISO certification, NSDL listed, we are a GSP, we are member of NASCOM, and we are recommended by ICAI fraternity. Our founder and chairman, CA Kapil Rana, he has been bestowed with the Economic Times Most Promising Entrepreneur of India Award. Kapil sir is also a first-class management and law graduate. Currently, he is pursuing PhD in business administration. Our co-founder and Chief Development Officer, CA Biswajit Mishra, has worked at senior management positions in companies like ENY, DLF, Maruti Suzuki. So friends, that was a brief introduction about Hostbooks. Now coming to our topic, today's speaker, CA Kamal Agarwal, will discuss on the recent judgment of Madras High Court on ITC. I would request Kamal sir, he will share his inputs on recent Madras High Court judgment on e-invoicing. But I would just like to give you a brief about Kamal sir. Kamal sir qualified as chartered accountant in 1991. He is a faculty at ICAI Indirect Taxes and a regular speaker at various chambers of commerce. Including CII, SOCHM, PhD chambers, etc., on indirect taxation, including GST. Kamal sir has conducted numerous online and offline sessions for variety of audience ranging from students to professionals, corporate houses to revenue officials. So, Kamal sir, please take over.
Thank you, Ruchi. Thank you, Hostbooks, and good evening to all participants. At the outset, just digressing from the topic, I will take about half a minute to update. As we know, in the last GST Council meeting, GST Council has constituted a group of ministers to look into the GST rates applicable on supplies in relation to COVID. So basically the medicines, the oxygen concentrators, etc., where there has, and sanitizers, etc., where there has been a lot of views being raised by public, by professional communities, that in view of this pandemic, the GST Council should consider reducing the rate of these products, which are essentially life-saving. And at this point in time, the government should not be looking towards making revenue. Rather than it should facilitate in the whatever way possible, uh, encourage supply of these products to common person, and facilitate saving of lives in the country. There was different views that whether exemption would be beneficial, but as the presentation by Chetan was going on, we have received the recommendation of the 44th GST Council meeting, where GST Council meeting on the recommendation of group of ministers has actually reduced the rate of GST on almost all products, which was applicable at 18% or 12% to 5%. So almost all products concerning COVID, maybe oxygenator, maybe sanitizer, maybe oxygen cylinder, etc., which was earlier chargeable to GST at the rate of 12% or 18%, they've been reduced to 5%. And two medicines, which were earlier chargeable to GST at the rate of 5%, they've been reduced to 0%. So that is a brief update I want to share with the audience. The press release has been issued. As we know, the GST notifications to actually implement these decisions would be issued in due course. So that was just a quick update because we received while the session was already going on. Now I come to the topic of the day, which has been allocated to me. And friends, this topic is so important that it touches every single person who deals with GST in one way or another. It is not necessary that he should be a taxpayer. This topic goes to the soul of GST. It concerns taxpayers, it concerns tax administrators, it concerns tax professionals like me and you, many of them, and it also concerns the fintech company like Hostbooks. So it concerns every single person. This is regarding input tax credit. And as we know, input tax credit is the soul of GST or any value added tax system where a supplier or the taxpayer is supposed to pay tax on the value addition. So there are various ways to achieve, but most popular way is, which has been implemented across the globe, is that you give credit of in GST or tax charge at the earlier stage, and value addition is charged in the hands of taxpayer. In GST, it is being implemented by way of granting input tax credit of tax charged by the previous supplier. The mechanism of input tax credit is not new to us. This input tax credit in the form of MODVAT was implemented long back, which was subsequently renamed as Central VAT, namely CENVAT, which subsequently covered excise and service tax. In sale tax regime, we used to have a single point mechanism, either at first point or last point, whereby we used to have forms that in case of first point, the supplier would charge tax, issue a form which will be used by all subsequent dealers so that their subsequent sales were not charged to sales tax. In case of last point items, the forms were issued by the purchasing dealers so that subsequent the initial sellers, they can produce forms and need not charge tax. So input tax credit was prevalent under excise and service tax, and in sale tax we used to have a single point levy, which used to be either first point or last point. But the issue in first point and last point was the government was losing revenue. In case of first point, all subsequent value additions were going tax free, and in case of last point, last point, sometime the government was not able to track the retailer or the last seller who was supposed to pay tax. So government was losing revenue in both the models. When we introduced VAT by replacing sales tax, there again we brought in this concept of input tax credit. So whatever tax was being charged on the earlier stage, that was allowed as an input tax credit to the subsequent suppliers. So that was a history, and this input tax credit mechanism was introduced under present GST law also. In the input tax credit, which was prevalent earlier in excise or service tax or VAT, there was many restrictions. In excise, input tax credit was allowed only for the goods used in or in relation to manufacture. In service, it was in relation to provision of service. And when we have SENVET credit rules, then the manufacture and service got integrated. But VAT, because VAT was a state levy, that still used to operate on a standalone footing. So no credit of excise or service tax was available against VAT or vice versa. So for a trader, excise and service tax used to be a cost. And for a service provider, VAT used to be a cost. In order to remove these anomalies, GST was brought in, which we all know was considered to be the biggest indirect tax reform of independent India. Now, when GST was introduced, we were told that it would be a seamless input tax credit. So if you procure, and if you look at the definition of input, read with section 16(1), which allows you input tax credit, it actually gives you a feeling that it is going to be a seamless input tax credit. Because they say that every registered person would get credit of input GST paid or input service or capital goods paid on procurement of goods or services or both, use or intended to be used in the course or furtherance of business. And it was a very wide definition, very welcomed by professional community, welcomed by trade community. And we all hope that all these issues in terms of classification, etc., which used to restrict input tax credit, which will go away. At the same time, people will get seamless input tax credit. So they would procure more and more goods and services on invoices, and GST would operate on a self-policing mechanism. And we would have more transactions being recorded in books of accounts. And thereby, it would not only increase the revenue of the government, but it will also increase overall GDP of the country, because more business transactions would come in the books of accounts. And this was being implemented with all good intentions of all the concerned parties. However, 4 years down the line, do we still see that vision of seamless input tax credit has been implemented? Are we going on that direction, or we have dropped that vision and we have created so many hurdles for variety of reasons that today GST is no longer goods and services tax, but as and not going into politics, become kind of a Gabbar Singh tax? Certainly, it was not anticipated that way. Now, we all know that for availing input tax credit, section 16(1) has given the opportunity that you can avail credit, and 16(2), which start with the non-obstante clause, saying notwithstanding anything contained in any provision of this section, the registered dealer can take credit provided the 4 conditions are fulfilled. And what are those 4 conditions? The condition number 1 is that he should have a possession of a tax invoice or any other document which entitles him to take credit. So condition number 1, that he should have received an invoice. Second condition is he should have received goods or services or both. Third condition is the supplier should have actually paid tax to the government. And fourth condition is the recipient should have been filing his returns on regular basis. So these are the four conditions which were implemented. Our discussion today, we have no problem with condition number 1, that person should have received the invoice. Certainly, if there is a genuine business transaction, there is no difficulty in meeting that condition. He would have an invoice or any other duty paying document. We have no difficulty in meeting the second condition also, which says that input tax credit can be received availed only if the goods or services have been received. That is also valid. So unless we receive goods or services which are used or intended to be used for our business, we should not be eligible or we should not be claiming that input credit. Fair enough. Subsequent amendment also enabled where on my direction, let's say goods are being supplied to host books and I raise an invoice on host books, then I am also deemed to have been received goods or services, and therefore I am allowed to avail credit and use that credit for payment of output tax liability on the invoice which are raised to host books. Certainly, the law requires compliant taxpayers, and therefore the recipient should be filing in regular return. That condition is also no difficulty in fulfilling. The third condition that is going to be a subject matter of our today's discussion is that supplier has actually paid tax to the government. The question is, the Madras High Court, that is the judgment that we are going to discuss today, has touched this topic, this condition. In the case that been addressed by Madras High Court, Madurai bench, a supplier, a couple, they have supplied certain goods to a company, and the goods and goods were received. The company had, or the taxpayer has made payment to the supplier. It was so happened that the suppliers have not deposited tax on those transactions to the government, and the tax authorities denied input tax credit in the hands of the recipient on the basis of section 16 subsection 2 clause C, which requires you to establish that tax has actually been paid to the government. Now, the Madras High Court has noted a couple of points. Madras High Court has observed that if the tax has not reached the government kitty, either the supplier or the recipient, one of them should pay tax to the government. That is condition, that is first observation. Second observation is they came heavily on the tax authorities, and they say that the fact that the recipient has actually paid tax to the supplier, that fact was established, then the authorities should have gone after the seller, after the suppliers, and not after the recipient, which is a very valid point, because the GST Council press release was presented to the authorities, where the GST Council has said that all efforts would be made to recover tax from the supplier, and only in exceptional circumstances, like supplier is missing or he does not have adequate assets, we would seek to recover tax from the buyer or the recipient. The Madras High Court has also said that in that case, the recipient should have been allowed to confront the supplier so that it can be established that actually recipient has paid tax to the supplier and it is the supplier's fault for which recipients are being uh, harassed. I would say recovery is sought to be made from the recipients. This judgment is very important. Why? Because this is the first judgment by a high court whereby a high court has actually looked at this issue. Besides this point, I would also like to mention that these provisions have been challenged on way of constitutional validity in various high courts, but we do not have any judgment yet whether this provision is constitutionally valid or not. But given that what is the situation today, because a business cannot wait for a long drawn process of having a high court judgment, and certainly that high court judgment would go to Supreme Court. Nobody knows how much time it will take. So the business has to go on. And what are the options, what are the strategies that are available with the taxpayer, the tax administrator, and the tax practitioners today? That is something which we like to discuss with you. Now, friends, first of all, if you look at that whether any mechanism has been provided to a taxpayer to check whether the supplier has actually paid tax to the government or not. As a recipient, I can only see that whether that supplier is registered, whether his GST number is valid, it has not been cancelled. Beyond that, I have no mechanism. So what I can do, I can periodically check whether my supplier is registered, his GST number is valid, and thankfully, because of these e-invoicing and waybill, if the supplier number is not valid, it is not possible for him to raise an invoice. So that can be taken care of. But the law requires me to ensure that the supplier has actually paid tax to the government. But the law does not provide me any tool what to do. Nowhere in the GST law or the GST rules or the mechanism of GSTN, and I will come to GSTR 2A or 2B in a moment. Nowhere it has been provided, or there is no mechanism provided to me in order to ensure that transaction that a supplier has entered into with me, tax on that has actually been paid to the government. The returns filed by a supplier, they are confidential data. Section 152 of the CGST Act that prevents public disclosure of that information. There is a recent decision by the Honorable Delhi High Court where a supplier actually wanted to verify whether the recipient has actually availed input tax credit on that particular transaction. And the revenue has responded, and Honorable High Court has agreed to the submission of the revenue that the recipient has no right under the CGST Act to have that kind of information, whether the recipient has availed credit or not. I have not come across any judgment yet where the recipient's right to ask question whether supplier has actually paid tax or not has been looked into. But can it be done? Now, let's see. We have these tools, GSTR 2A and 2B. There are questions about the legal validity of GSTR 2A, 2B. We may refer to them in a little later. But just tier 2A or 2B, do they provide me with a conclusive evidence that tax on that has actually been paid? Is there any provision in the law or the rules or the press release or any notification, circular or GSTN disclosure or any communication? Has a government ever said that any transaction appearing in GSTR 2A can be considered to be a sufficient compliance of section 16(2) subclause C, wherein the actual payment of tax to the to the government is required? The answer is no. These are only statements produced on the basis of GSTR 1 or invoice furnished by the supplier. The requirement is not that. The requirement is payment of tax. The mechanism provided by government does not even talk about that. So am I not right to say that government has not provided me any mechanism to fulfill this requirement, fulfill this mandatory condition? Now, also, many of you would know that a new subclause AA, has been inserted in section 16, subsection 2, which also which says that additional condition has been inserted, that the details of invoices has been made available to the recipient by way of GSTR 2A 2B. I'm not going to that technical legal language of that. My submission is that when this subclause has been inserted, while retaining the subclause which asked me to establish actual payment of tax to the government, is it not an additional condition? Because I am maintaining both conditions. So if I am maintaining both conditions, that means it is an additional condition and not a condition replacing the earlier condition. That means the invoice furnishing facility or GSTR 1 concluding in GSTR 2A or 2B are not fulfilling the requirement of 16(2) subclause C, which requires me to establish payment of tax by the supplier. So I have to comply with both conditions. As we know, at this point in time, the subclause AA has not yet been notified. So as of now, the requirement is only to establish that supplier has actually paid tax to the government. And I just mentioned, I hope you people are with me, that there is no mechanism provided by the government or the GST Council or the GST network whereby I can say to my proper officer, sir, you have asked me to produce this document. I am producing this document before you. You can verify this document is not forged. This is a document genuinely issued in the manner prescribed in the GST rules. And therefore, you kindly consider this as a sufficient compliance of the requirement under 16(2) subclause C. There is none. So in that situation, we come to a mechanism where that GST law has asked me to do an impossibility. There is a Latin maxim which says that no law can ask a person to do an impossible. The GST law presently has asked me to do an impossible only. So it has put an onus on me, whereby they have provided me no tools. Rather, I am prohibited from looking into the returns of the supplier. And therefore, I am not in a position to fulfill that requirement. So my submission on this point is that Madras High Court decision, the Honorable High Court is a first decision. It's a welcome decision. It has set the tone. But my understanding is that this is going to be a long drawn battle, which will be opined by various high courts, and ultimately it would be decided by the Supreme Court that whether this requirement is a mandatory requirement or it has to be read down, or the government will come up with any mechanism whereby we are able to satisfy this requirement. Now, GST Council has elaborately discussed this issue. The press release that was referred to in that judgment way back in 2018, that was the result of that elaborate discussion that has happened in 27th GST Council meeting. In GST Council meeting, there were various views being presented, and this discussion was happened when they were discussing about the new return mechanism. Mr. Nandan Nilekani also made presentation. CBIC chairman also made presentation, and many other officials made presentations. GST Council was very right in its deliberation that if the availment of input tax credit is not linked with payment of tax, then government may lose a lot of revenue. The Honorable Bombay High Court in case of Mahalakshmi has said that unless government receives the tax, how can it grant credit? Fair enough. If the government does not receive tax, it cannot grant credit, and the government cannot be out of pocket. We don't dispute that. But how an honest taxpayer who has actually paid tax to the supplier can be penalized and asked to pay tax twice, once to the supplier to whom you have granted registration, you have still not cancelled his GST number, and I am being penalized while that supplier is getting scot-free. How a taxpayer is supposed to do his business? The Honorable Delhi High Court in Arise India, in the case of Delhi VAT, has very beautifully addressed this issue and say we have two kinds of taxpayers. One kind of taxpayer which are honest taxpayers, which are procure goods on the payment of tax, who have entered into a genuine business transactions and paid tax to the supplier, all in good faith, presuming that the supplier will pay tax to the government as and when it becomes due. The supplier did not pay tax. That is one set of taxpayers. The second set of taxpayers are the fraudulent one, who colluded with the fraudulent supplier, and they say that I will take credit, and the supplier would default in his payment or payment of tax or filing of return, or will vanish from the scene. So while the recipient or the purchaser has availed credit, the supplier has gone away. So that is kind of the set of fraudulent taxpayers who designs their affair in such a way to defraud the interest of the revenue. The Honorable Delhi High Court has said that both taxpayers cannot be visited with same penalties. Same set of consequences cannot be visited to by both set of taxpayers. Treating both set of taxpayers, one is fraudulent and another is honest, is violative of Article 14 of the Constitution of India, which says that you cannot distinguish or discriminate among the citizens of India. It is just like that the people, there are 5 people standing on a crime scene, only one of them actually has murdered somebody, and the government say all the people who are there or even not there who are passing through the Chimnon, all these are presumed to be guilty of murder. Are we going to live in law like that? The answer is no. So you have to establish, and Delhi High Court has very rightly said that unless you establish that the purchaser was fraudulent, he was colluding with the fraudulent supplier with an intent to defraud the interest of the revenue, his input tax credit cannot be denied. The government has all the means. The government has power to inspection, government has power to arrest, government has power to freeze their assets, government has all the means to go after the supplier and freeze their assets and recover their money. Absolutely right. We have no problem with that, and we can never have a problem with that. But in this country, where more than 85% are MSME sector, who do not have the means to run to High Court on every denial of input tax credit, can this provision be allowed to remain in the law books, or can it be implemented in the way it was being implemented in the issue which came up before the Honorable Madras High Court? Particularly when no mechanism has been provided in the law or in the rules for any honest taxpayer to verify whether his supplier has actually paid tax or not. As I mentioned earlier, GSTR 2A and 2B are not the answers. And we do not have an answer. I'm unfortunately, I'm not here. I'm no means to provide you an answer, because there is no answer in the law. So one is that this is unconstitutional in my opinion, my submission. This provision should be held unconstitutional or should be read down by various high courts. But that is a long drawn process. Now let's come to 2A and 2B also. As I submitted earlier, a new subclause AA has been introduced by way of Finance Act 2021. The said provision has yet to be implemented. The legal provision would result in this data being made available to the recipient in the form of GSTR 2A and 2B. But GSTR 2A and 2B were implemented long earlier. The GST authorities have been raising demands merely by charging tax on the difference between input tax credit in 3B and input tax credit in GSTR 2A or 2B. The question is, and both GSTR 2A and 2B have been implemented by way of rules. The question is, when a substantive provision in the Act has been introduced by Finance Act 2021 and yet to be implemented, can the rules which were supposed to implement a provision which is yet to be notified be implemented. It is like that, that you implement the rules and we will keep enacting the law later on. Can it happen? It does not happen. We have numerous judicial pronouncements which has said that the rules are only to implement the law. That means law has to come first. Thereafter, rules have to come in order to implement the law. It is not that we define the rules first and then bring the law. Also keep in mind, my dear friends, that this new subclause had not been introduced with retrospective effect. So the position is the day GSTR 2A and 2B were introduced, there were no legal provision which substantiated these two return forms. So when GSTR 2A and 2B were not supported by any legal provision, hence they were not legal, they did not have authority of the law. Can any demand raised on the basis of difference between 3A and 2A or 2B, can that be held to be valid? In my humble opinion, the answer is no. My submission is, till the time this subclause is implemented, enforced, for all transactions happened before that, any demand raised on the basis of difference between your input tax credit claimed in GSTR 3B and input tax credit reflected in GSTR 2A or 2B, then demand is questionable. If the basis of demand is only of these difference, my submission is that you must challenge those demands and must keep these appellate proceedings alive, so that tomorrow if a higher court struck down these provisions, then you have that benefit. Because this fight will not stop with only Madras High Court decision. Honorable Madras High Court has given a beautiful judgment, but there are various facets to this dispute which are yet to be addressed. The constitutional validity of this provision is to be addressed. The argument that law cannot ask me to do an impossibility is also yet to be established. And even if it is presumed for a moment that GSTR 2B is a proof of payment of tax, then can GSTR 2B also relied? Because GSTR 2B may not have a invoice only because of some technical reason. I have entered to a transaction with the supplier. Hostbooks has raised an invoice on me. I'm in Delhi. Hostbooks in Gurgaon. They raised an invoice on me. Instead of charging IGST, probably they have charged CGST or SGST. It will not come in my 2A. So should I be deprived of input tax credit because of the error at their point, at their time? Or there was an error including either in B2B, they have shown in B2C, or there can be some other technical or clerical error. We have a host of jurisprudence which says that substantive benefits cannot be denied for want of technical errors or for want of clerical errors. A taxpayer must be granted the opportunity to rectify those errors. We have a recent Delhi High Court decision where the Honorable Delhi High Court has even said, in case of Trans 1, that people who could not file Trans 1 and do not even have a proof. They have made attempt for filing. They have no proof of any technical glitches. They should also be given an opportunity of manually filing trans 1, because there is no provision in the law to have their input tax credit foregone, and the substantive benefit available to the SSC that cannot be taken away like that. So friends, this is the situation of input tax credit which is emerging. My submission, my advice to all these people is, where there is a demand which is being raised purely on the basis of these differences, you must contest that demand. All other three conditions, that you must actually have an invoice, you must actually receive goods or services, and you must be filing your input tax credit, those conditions are to be fulfilled, no doubt about it, but not that actually paid tax. That condition is not in the hands of the recipient, and therefore he cannot be penalized for that. And that is the legal submission. Now, I just mentioned about a while earlier, 85 to 90% of taxpayers in this country, they operate in MSME sectors. Now, MSME sector, people will ask me, sir, should I run my business or should I keep sitting with my lawyers and in High Court? What will happen? I would say, dear friend, I am supporting you with the law. The law is on your side, but you have to be smart. You have to keep reconciling your input tax credit register with GSTR 2A and 2B on regular basis. There is no fun, there is no benefit in going into a fight which you can avoid. If you regularly keep reconciling your GSTR 2B and your input tax credit, and I'm sure Hostbooks can provide a solution to that for reconciling those things. If you can keep reconciling, and if you alert your supplier that, sir, I have purchased the goods and services from you, hey, this is the invoice number, somehow because of some technical error or some oversight, this is not appearing in my GSTR 2A 2B, can you please have it rectified? My submission is that mode should be applied first, and only in case you are not able to have supplier file the return, show your input tax credit, you are not able to resolve it by your amicable ways, then and department come and raise a demand, you should go for litigation. So this situation is going to emerge. This is going to be a long fight. There are going to be a number of High Court and Supreme Court decisions on this point. We would keep bringing you all those decisions as and when we have any update. But keep in mind that we need to fight this both on the legal aspect as well as on a strategy, that how to run my business and not lose the input tax credit. That is all I wanted to say on this short but very important judgment. I've seen some question answer. Let me see. Okay, one question which has been raised, that how department will come to know that supplier has actually don't pay tax. And this also been said that in VAT regime also, department was denying input tax credit when the supplier has not paid tax. Absolutely valid questions. Now, department does not have means to verify, so I cannot be even expected to, because department has means, my dear friend, because you put invoice wise detailed in GSTR 1. The GSTR 1 results into a tax liability which department can compare with tax liability that you have declared and deposited in your GSTR 3B. Department has that data. I do not have that data. And recently, the rules were amended that if there is a significant difference between tax liability declared in GSTR 1 and 3B, the GST number can be suspended. And if a satisfactory response cannot be given, then it can even be cancelled. So department has all the means. Department can even call for information for verifying whether the tax has actually not been paid or not. Coming to a second point, that in VAT regime also department was denying this credit. So my dear friend, we have a decision in VAT regime by Punjab Haryana High Court, by Delhi High Court, by Madras High Court, by number of other high courts, where in VAT regime they have categorically held that for suppliers' fault, buyers cannot be penalized, and wherever there is a denial of credit by authorities in VAT regime, that credit was subsequently allowed. Because the provisions in VAT regime are not paramateria with the GST provisions, and as very rightly said by Honorable Madras High Court, that the decision of VAT regime cannot be applied straightway to GST and GST regime. We would have to wait for decisions by various high courts in GST regime. But I can assure you, the principles that have been enumerated by various high courts in judgments delivered in VAT regime, they are equally applicable in GST regime as well. I'm sure the various high courts will see the plight of the honest taxpayers in this country, and they will come to our rescue. If there are any more questions, we would be happy to answer. Otherwise, I think we can give it back to Hostbooks for their further proceedings.
Thank you, Kamal sir. Thank you for this enlightening session. I think we would like to conclude the session now. And I would like to thanks all the audience, Kamal sir, and Hostbooks for organizing this wonderful session. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time.